And I think this is still in this chapter that we were. You never cricked the insulation? Yeah, what happens, if you ever notice, if it's stranded wire, it'll start bird caging out at the back out there.
Well, I never print that close to the end of the, you know, when the neck comes in.
Oh, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. A lot of people don't do that. Let me pause this until. Usually, yeah, 3 chapter and California. Hmm? How can wires and cables be installed? What is the advantage and disadvantage of various installation methods? How are wires and cables spliced and terminated? What are the differences between medium and low and high voltage termination? Bending radius. A lot of cables, especially communication cables, and especially fiber optics, specifies what we call a bending radius. A quarter circle that a cable can follow when it's routed around a corner. Makes sense. Conduit, a tube or trough used to route conductors and cables used for protection. Fish tape. A long flexible tape used to thread or pull cables and conductors through conduit. Have you heard these terms before? Yeah. Pulling, the act of threading cables through a conductor. Yeah. How many times have I taught this and I've never noticed that? I did the same. I guess because of the top one up there. Well, you're not supposed to do that. There's a guy, we'll show you one way of pulling. It's called, I don't know if you've ever seen it, vacuum pulling.
Yeah.
And he's run this, and he does loops and everything. He shoots that thing through there. It's so cool. Penciling, tapering insulation into a sharpened end of a pencil. A splice, the physical connection of two or more conductors to provide electrical continuity. Electrical continuity, we say is 0 ohms, but y'all understand 0 ohms is impossible. That's what our meter would be. Termination, the act of bringing a conductor to its final connection point. Use the continuity. If you got a continuity beeper on your meter, it's usually below 1 ohm. It'll beep on anything below 1 ohm. These are our types of conduit, and unfortunately we don't have many of these over here. When we teach it over in A building, we used to go out and look at the chairlift out there, and they have flexible conduit and all different types of conduits on there. Y'all probably seen some of these. We have what we call rigid metal conduit, and we might try to do that. We might try to go over there into the, because that won't take very long. Maybe take a break and then go over there to A building and look at some of the conduit and stuff we have over there. Plus, we got the electrical lab that's over there also, and we can see, conduit benders and that kind of stuff. Rigid metal conduit. So we got what we call rigid metal conduit. This is rigid metal conduit. We used to call this RMC. And then we have EMC, which is electrical magnetic tubing. No, it's EMT, right? So this is RMT. EMT, you'll see this used a lot. A lot of people refer to this as thin wall. So if you ever heard thin wall for conduit, this is the EMT conduit. Thin wall. And so this guy, what's nice about thin wall is, or EMT, is easier to bend. Rigid is hard to bend, especially with a foot bender. So we'll show you our foot bender that we use to bend EMT. Rigid is real. Sometimes you can bend it with a foot bender, but you got to do it in little tiny increments, little bit at a time. It takes a long time. So normally rigid conduit, you buy the joints, the bends and the curves and everything you want to, and screw them on. You'll see that used a lot. It's a lot like what you do when you run copper plumbing. So most time you don't bend copper plumbing. What do? Yeah, you buy an elbow or a 45 or whatever you want and do it that way. So that's most of the time you do that with RMT. Flexible metal conduit. So flexible metal conduit, we use this a lot between things that's going to be in motion. Yeah, so we do have some EMT over here. So this is EMT, 3/4 inch running across that, right? So that's what we call EMT up there. And you can get that different gauges. The bigger the gauge, though, the harder it is to bend. So we have foot benders. The foot benders are usually for a.
Somebody look at the bend mark.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, you can leave bend marks there. Well, you can actually see it over on the furthest one over there where they have the bend marks up there where they marked it to make that bend to make it go over there. So if you take the commercial wiring class, that's where they teach conduit bending. No, they don't do rigid metal conduit because, like I said, usually you don't bend rigid metal conduit. You'll cut it, you'll thread it. So you have pipe threaders, and you thread it, and then you put a joint on there, a coupling, on there to get the bend that you want. So that's the way you usually do rigid. But EMT, you can't. EMT is always got to be supported. So it's got to be on a wall, it's got to be up against something, and it's going to have to be supported. Rigid metal conduit, you could drop that from the ceiling and hook a box up to it. So you'll see that a lot. You can see rigid metal conduit can be freestanding. They'll use a lot of RMT in industry too, because the industry is, in industrial applications, not commercial applications. Commercial applications uses a lot of thin wall, where industrial applications you usually use RMT or the rigid metal. Underforged steel restways, cellular steel restways, steel wireways, steel busways, liquid tight flexible conduit. So if you got an HVAC system outside your house, it always vibrates. So it can't have solid conduit. So it's got flexible, and it's going to be this guy right here. It's going to be the liquid tight because it rains out there all the time, right? And then auxiliary steel gutters. This shows you, and this is a pretty neat chart. This shows you where different types of conduit is allowed. So P means it's what? Permitted. E means you got an exception. X means it's not permitted, and conditions do not apply. So you see, rigid metal conduit is just about where? Everywhere. Cinder block, you got to be careful because it's got concrete. I don't know. It's a good question. Of course, PVC conduit, you got to have, it's special too, right? It might be in here later. Huh? Conduit mostly. So this is where it comes into play. Why it's not in this chart, I don't know. Yeah, usually if you're going to run it through concrete, usually they usually run PVC through concrete, because the problem with is the acids and everything in concrete will eat metal up. So that's why you don't ever use metal and bury metal in concrete. So you'll see PVC used in concrete. Oh, to put it in concrete? Yeah, it'll eat it.
But you don't know what's going on there.
So this says below ground, it says you're going to use what? Either what? Fiber or PVC, right? Above ground, you're either going to use EMT, also called what? Thin wall. Intermediate, IMT, which is it's got a thicker wall on it. Rigid, either galvanized steel, enamel steel, or aluminum. PVC, above ground, liquid type, flexible conduit, or flexible metal conduit. Okay, we okay? So this is below ground systems. So these are predominantly PVC, right? You understand that? You don't see much metal underground anymore. If they ran metal underground, they're not doing it anymore. Either that or they're using a metal coated, like some of the stuff that they make out at U.S. Pipe, where it's basically coated with a real thick coating on there. This is above ground, so this would be threaded. We don't run into threaded until we get into rigid conduit, right? You understand that? And then we have the EMT, which is also called thin wall. We don't ever thread thin wall. Why is that? Because it's thin wall. Your threads will. So what we do on thin wall is we usually use compression couplings on there, or we use set screw couplings, different types depending on where you're at. So here's some of the EMT fittings. So you got to support EMT. You understand that, because it's not designed. It's the only purpose of the EMT is for protection. So you got to support it. And so you can look over there at our example, and you see they've got to have those supports ever so far. And that's in the NEC code book, how far you have to space those strap, they call them snap straps. Yeah, I remember that. Conduit clamps, drive-in straps, which would be for wood, right? These are your compression types. You know what the compression types are, right? We have all these over in 208. So like I said, we'll probably try to go over there and look. So how does the compression work? Yeah, it's got a sleeve in there. You put it in there, and when it comes down, it crimps that sleeve in and causes it to hold. These are more expensive. You'll see these used all over the place. Yeah, these set screw types. So what you do is you just have the conduit slides into it, and you tighten down that set screw. You see these used a lot in commercial applications. Yeah, they're cheaper because you got. Sometimes you can't use these. Your watertight fittings are always going to be compression type. So any type of watertight fittings where you got to make a watertight seal outside is going to be a compression type. And then it'll have a rubber gasket inside there also. These will be used inside. So you can use these, so they got any up there? Yeah. So you can see it right in the center. So that would be a set screw type, but that's inside, right? Are we okay? And then you have lock nuts, you have notch lock nuts, you have grounding lock nuts. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's got a screw on the side where you can actually make a ground through the lock nut. Especially on watertight fittings, usually you lose your ground through a watertight fitting, because what happens, you got a rubber gasket in there that keeps the water from getting in, right? So normally on a watertight fitting, you'll have to, you're using the conduit for the ground. You can literally it's legal to use conduit for a ground, but you got to make sure that it is a constant ground, right? Understand? So what that means is that if you go through a watertight fitting, you're going to have to do what? You're going to have to put a strap across it. Plastic insulated bushings, metal bushings, insulated metallic. So this is basically a watertight fitting, and that's what we just got through talking about. So what they have to do on a watertight fitting is they have to do what? They have to have a ground strap, right, to complete the ground. Are we okay? Wireways and wire ducts. So we call these wireways. It's also called wire ducts and also called wire troughs. You hear people call them wiring troughs. These guys usually wear them where? Up in the ceiling. You'll see in industrial applications, you'll see them all over the place. Because what's so nice is it's easy to get the cables in. It gives the cable support, right? You understand. It's also easy to get them in there and easy to get them out. You got to do repairs. If you pull that through a conduit, a tube, and something happens, you got to do what? You have to pull it out and then put it back in, right? So this wiring troughs are used a lot. And in fact, of course, we got Ours wouldn't be easy. These are troughs that run under the floor. I don't know if y'all can see the plugs out here in the middle of the floor. Aerial insulation, higher ampacity, lower maintenance, insulated triplex, insulated quadruplex. You know what those terms mean? What do they mean? What's triplex? What is duplex? What's a duplex for? Okay, two. So that would be two wires, right? You understand that? Well, what we drop from our house is triplex. Now one of them's uninsulated, so that's what it is. A triplex cable with, because that center is your neutral, right, or your ground. Non-insulated solid or pipe must be able to withstand high winds, storms, and ice. So we've seen these guys, right? These are power poles. A lot of people call them telephone poles. These are power poles. Of course, these things vary. How they do it, when they do it. This would be one that basically this pole is wood, right? And then we have the watt, a cross brace. And then wood is not a good conductor, but wood conducts, right? I saw something, what was the name of that show? I forgot. Where they was trying to convert a car over to batteries. And the first thing they did was take all those batteries, and the batteries they were using were batteries that you put in handrails. It was real neat. It was one like it was one of the shows that Jesse James used to do. You know, not the motorcycle, when they used to do all these projects. And they tried to convert, I don't forget what type of car it was. Huh? No, it wasn't Mythbusters. He had a show where he'd bring in a crew and he would tell them they wanted to do something. So it was some car. I mean, it was a regular car. They pulled the engine out of it and they wanted to convert it over to electric. And they used, at first they decided to use 2x4s to mount the batteries in. And guess what happened? Well, yeah, well, it rains. What happened? And the wood got wet, and that's what happened. It literally burned them up. So it melted their batteries too. So this would be your triplex. This is the way you run your house, right? You understand that. So we have two insulated wires, and then these are wrapped around a watt. These are wrapped around the neutral, which is also rated to, it's reference to ground, right? So, are you okay there? And what do they call, what does the power company call this? They call it a down drop. You know, they call it a down drop. So the down drop is yours. Y'all know that? Power company ends right there. So if something happens to you, what? No, power company, from what I understand, the down drop is yours. So the down drop is yours. Check on that. I've almost. Really? Not a. Okay. You were like, they're, I think they call themselves LPC. They're out there, trimming trees for the power company right now. Oh man. Yeah, they're doing it. So the act of running the cable through conduit, or even in a cable trough, we refer to this as pulling. That's just the name. So even if you're laying in a table trough, we still call it pulling. Pulling, cable pull, have to be pulled through conduit. So you're not supposed to run the cable through the conduit while you're installing the conduit. You understand that? You're supposed to install the conduit first, right? And then do what? Then pull the cable through there. And there's a lot of rules on how many conductors you can pull, how much space you gotta leave. And there's a lot of rules. We call them fields, conduit fields. And we don't teach that. They would teach that in commercial wiring. Your conduit fields, what's legal, what you have to do there. So that would be a real good class today. before pulling the cable, you should check the NEC manufacturer's cable information chart to determine the suitability of the cable chosen for the job. Check the temperature rating and the weight of the cable, survey the environment and the terrain, and measure the length of the cable run to determine the amount of cable required. That's awful. This happened to me. So my son, why I know that, my son originally bought a trailer and they moved into a trailer park, and we were responsible for the cable running from the box to the trailer. So his father-in-law went out there and measured it, and he called me and said, well, you're going to need this much cable. So I went out to an electrical place and I bought it and went out there, and he was about 8 foot short. That was fun. So we had to run everything. We had to run the underground conduit. We had to trench it out, run the underground conduit, and connect it up to the feeder, and then run it into his house. So we spliced it. So we stagger spliced it, but we had to do what? We had to pull that sucker back out and then do what? Pull it back in. Huh? Yeah. But what we did is we staggered spliced it, because you didn't want them on top of each other and then tape them up. But you really wouldn't have to tape them up because they were stagger spliced and they were underground. So that was a fun job. Well, you couldn't pull this. This was. If you can do it that way, what you can do, and we have people that do this, which is smart, is while you're pulling your conduit, to put your string in there. So while you're putting your conduit together, put a pull string in there, and then that way you don't have to fish that fish tape through there. Because sometimes that fish tape, sometimes it's not long enough, and sometimes it gets caught to fish it through there. Insertion to pull line, existing rope, fish tape, and pressure vacuum, which is pretty neat. So we got guys. I'm going to show you one which is a sure enough high dollar vacuum pressure that they pull it through. But then there's some videos where guys use shop vacs. Yeah, that's what they do. Yeah, like off a bread, and then they'll lay it over, and then they'll go on the other end and put a shop vac back there, and it'll suck that thing through there. This guy's funny though, because he's back there holding it, feeding it in so it don't get tangled. And guess what he does? Comes out of his hand, and he shoots the whole thing through there. And he does. Yeah, it takes several times for long pulls. Yeah, you can, and plus they're not as flexible as they say they are. So there are some places you get, like trying to get it around a 90-degree fish tape is hard. So. Yeah. So this is vacuum or pressure pull, which is pretty neat. And like I said, they make these machines, but I've seen people use shop vacs. And a real good shop vac, seal it up, go on the other end, hook it up to your conduit. So what they'll do is they'll put a length out there, and they'll hook it up to that conduit and pull their string through there. And either the string is going to be big enough to make your pull, but if it's not, you shoot a small string through there, and then you use that to pull a rope through there, and then pull your rope through there, and then hook your cable up to that. Yeah, expensive stuff. And like I said, we got one that they're shooting fiber cable. They're actually doing fiber cable, and fiber cable you have to be locked, but they make these devices. But like I said, I see a lot of guys they just use a shop vac.
little water that is water.
Well, that's why shock vac, you don't, a good shock vac will pull the water out if there's any in there.
Little nasty water.
So my link's not working. And this is,
You give a lesson job, you know,
or sitting back there while they're pulling it and you apply the lubricant to it. That's a job that's the new guy gets that too. So yeah, they have pulling lubricant that when they pull these big cables, and that's all these people do. They sit back, they get that old grease and just pull it up. Yeah. Well, they have different types.
A lot of times you work in a blind pump. You don't want to blow.
You don't want to blow the water out if you work it in a.
I'm talking about if you got a box. You want to do something with the box. This box, you try to add a lot to it. Be careful about it.
So let's look at this video and then we'll take a break, guys.
And then what we're going to do is I'd like to blow air on it if there is any water in the
Okay.
get the water out, and then shoot a slug through there, a mandrel, make sure everything's fine.
So this is a $100 pulling machine
And
right
it's
here.
good. Then the next thing we're going to do is shoot a foam carrier through there, a sponge with lube in front of it and behind it.
I might have to
What
advance this.
that's
This is
gonna
pretty
do
long.
It's going to lube the run ahead of the cable. When that comes out, the next step is to prep the cable. And what we'll do is we'll put a missile on the front end of the cable attached to a swivel.
So here what they do is they actually do the cable. They don't do a full of rope. They
We'll
actually
feed the cable through the back of the machine, lower the
pretty good sized cable.
turn the air on any water that might be in the run, go on the
Yeah, so notice what they do. They label the cable and they go ahead and unspool it and put it in a figure eight. That's especially for like fiber cable.
Dude, watch it.
Yeah, so this is the actual cradle rig. So what he's going to do is he's going to come here and he's going to put he's going to assemble the guy that takes flows and you can do flowing or you can do suction. Most people that I've seen that uses shop vacs use suction. So what they'll do is they'll just put it on the other side and pull a rope through there.
And what that does is when we're pressure testing,
So shoot the plastic bag through their
prevents
body.
the air from blowing back. So when you put this on top, it creates a seal. And it goes just down like that with your pipe coming into it. So once we are done with proofing and sending the sponge through, we'll pop that up and then we'll put the feed tube in and then run the cable. Okay.
What he's doing, he's training these people on how to do it. So undoubtedly they're selling this thing. The impression I get, this company is selling this thing.
Prevent the air from coming back.
So he's teaching these people how to do
So
that.
when you're sizing these, you may know.
Yeah.
So they ain't got this building. So look at the size of the cable they're pulling. This is pretty close to the phone thing that I have.
$100 make you yours. Take it right in your pocket. I got it, so right?
And I don't know how far they're going. They tell them people there. Well,
Are they getting water or anything out over there? Or?
I can't ask them to give us a call.
Oh, okay.
So here's the machine. This is not actually, I don't know if this is not the actual cable.
Then the next thing we're going to do is shoot a foam carrier through there.
You gotta be a rocket scientist. Put this thing up.
Probably come out in like 2.5 minutes. Next step is to prep the cable.
Okay, so here's the actual. Here's the
Put the
cable.
missile on the front end of the cable attached to a
So you can
swivel,
see it's got that
attached to
plug
a
on the
grip
front. That's
on the
actually
fiber.
what actually.
And what we'll do is, once we do all these tests, we'll feed the cable to the back of the machine, lower the tracks, turn the air on, get the cable. So that's it.
Oh yeah, no, you mean? I don't know if I might have skipped over. That's a lubricant he's putting in there. All he's doing now is just checking.
A missile on the front end of the cable attached to a swivel, attached to a grip on
Oh
the
yeah, so
fiber.
this is the
And
actual
what we'll
cable.
do is, once we do all these tests, we'll feed the cable to the back of the machine, lower the tracks, turn the air on, get the cable.
No, they don't show that.
Distance readings, but we'll
So
take
this is optical
the
fiber.
cable to make sure everything is in balance. So,
Huh? Yeah, but watch it. I mean, this thing's flat.
Well, that thing's all handled.
Yeah, it's all done.
That's a good guy, right?
Yeah, I just, I like it cranked up.
No, this, this guy here got motorized wheels on. Look how fast the thing goes. That's 7 guys so far. Yeah, but I think I'm almost sure this is these people are selling. Here's they're going to show us where it's going to. I think it's going right out here. Yeah, see, there it is, right? There they are, right there. So that's high dollar, but you can look up vacuum pullers, on YouTube, and that's what they'll do. You'll see a lot of guys that use nothing but a shop vac. But I guarantee somebody like Alabama Power or something like that don't have that. All right, let's take a break. It's
Offset to go to your box.
or even those, so that would be considered an offset bins up there too. So even the change surfaces, would be the same thing. We got some videos that's really good. It's a lady, and she does a really good job on it.
We use tractor on a lot of stuff. You can always use it well. You work on the spare and nothing else. You want this and that's it. Or you take a old welder rod and bend it in the angle that you want.
Yeah, I've seen people do that too. Or like a 12 gauge solid strand wire. I've seen them bend that too. Bend it the way they.
If you get good, what you usually mess up on, you'll bend all that stuff, then the last bend, you want to go left and you went right. If you switch it over and get the last bend, instead of that, it's the right way. So that's why you need a little wire.
That's one job I'm glad I don't have. Of course, some people like it. Some people are good. Some people, I've seen people not even take out a tape measure or anything. I mean, they bend it by eye and they don't miss a beam,
Yeah.
but they've been at it so long.